here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Marco Canova and Tom Dyer.
Hey!
Got them muted. Here we go. Gentlemen, can you hear us okay on the other side of the planet?
Loud and clear.
Yes, Dean.
All right. Thank you for joining us, guys. This is fabulous. So exciting. So exciting to have you guys live with us on National Flair Bartenders Day. I don't know how to make it international. How do we do that?
Just say it and it's done.
Yeah, just add a couple letters.
You know what? Who's going to stop us, right? So, welcome to International Flair Bartenders Day. All right. Let me just fix that right now. International Flair Bartenders Day. There it is. I just fixed it on the screen. All right.
Perfect. Now I can change my comment.
It's now International Flair Bartenders Day. Guys, what's going on? How have you been?
Good, thanks. Good. Doing well, you know. Keeping up with the Joneses. Keeping up with what's happening in the Flair world. How are you guys?
I'm doing great. Marco, what's going on with you? Where are you at today?
I'm home, Dean. Back in Italy for a couple of more days, and off to Norway tomorrow for work. But yeah, doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, you guys are working on a special project. Rob, did you have any questions to get started on that?
Yeah, I guess the first question being kind of with the title of everything, and to kind of bring everyone up to speed and those watching and not knowing, educate them. Gentlemen, this question goes out to both of you. From your point of view, describe the differences between European flair and flair across the globe.
Right.
Marco,
It's a very broad question, Rob, you know.
Marco, go on.
I think overall, if we are talking about competition flair, then yes, there is a difference between the European style and the American style. In the American style, we can call the American style kind of the universal style in a way, because the Asian, they picked up a lot on the American. So if you're looking at competition itself, there is definitely a difference. And when it comes to really the style and the movements, especially when it comes to more than two objects, you know, the 3 and the 4 bottles, I think those were the first that they have defined the flair, European flair bartending, which maybe came out of the UK.
Can't hear you, Marco.
Yeah, your microphone's a little choppy.
How about now?
There you go.
Better.
I was saying that clearly in the late 90s and early 2000 in England, a lot of all the old school guys came up with a lot of new moves when it comes to 3 and 4 bottles, and that was kind of you know, kind of explosion, let's say, of the European / UK style flair, which then translated into also the 1 team bottle, which was, in my opinion, slightly different in terms of the type of moves. You know, if you, it's difficult to explain, but if you watch a video, you kind of understand. You know, the American style when it comes to the 3 bottles, as you all know, it's the base of it is the juggling style, you know, up in the air, and then every now and then you do a different cut or a different move. But versus the European style, when it comes to the 3 bottles, it's a lot of grabs, a lot of rolls, a lot of misdirection or taps, you know, mainly when it comes to 3 and 4 bottles. And, you know, the American style did adjust to the European and vice versa. They both kind of meld together at some point. I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit, Tom.
Yeah, I think Marco's kind of covered it. You know, like there was quite a big divide years ago when Marco and I was competing at the early 2000s. Probably the same for you guys. And that's mostly down to, I think, the fact that the US was the place where flair began, and the juggling style of flair bartending was, you know, the leading way of flair. And then a bunch of people came along and wanted to show something different, wanted to show a different way of doing flair, namely Nicholas St. John, who was the first to do 3 bottles in non-juggling style. But as we know, if you just from one thing from one hand to another, that's juggling. So flair bartenders are all jugglers. Whether you like it or not, we're all jugglers that make cocktails. But I think Marco said a key thing there is that these styles that differed. Sorry, I'll start again. These styles which separated the US and the European, so to speak, for so long, I think that line has gone. I think the Europeans, flair is very, very strong over here, and now Europe is kind of leading the way with flair, and especially with competition and difficulty and everything else. That we're seeing people adopt this European style, and we're still getting people who want to learn a juggling style and use juggling tricks. It's actually now refreshing when you see someone like Rodrigo Delpech come to a competition and smash out 3 and 4 bottles like a demon, whereas normally we're just seeing people do split snatch catch to some kind of very, very heavy dubstep style music. So whereas before I wasn't a huge fan of that juggling American style, now I love to see it because I don't see it enough anymore.
Nice. So I agree with everything you're saying 100%. It's great seeing like way back in the day of like Legends and Quest and seeing all different countries competing. But when they get on stage, they all kind of had their own unique style. Like you're saying, European was very bottled tin and great manipulation of objects. American was very, bold, big, more objects, more difficulty. Japan was very choreographed and precise. Like Latin America was just dancing and smooth and choreography was amazing. So it's great seeing the difference of it. But you kind of touched on something which I think is phenomenal right now, is the amount of competitions, flair bartending competitions, still going on to this day in the UK. I think you guys are running the most right now. Do you want to talk about like where you guys are at with competitions right now and how you're still so successful with them?
Yeah. I live in Lisbon now, in Portugal. So although I'm still connected to the UK, the UK has a very prominent flair, what's the words? Center, I suppose. Let's say the UK is a very prominent flair center. Right. The sad fact is that there's no one in the UK currently competing who can even come close to being, one of the top guys or girls, which is sad. But you've got the WFA organizing the Bawley Ballison competition, which is, I think, 4 qualifiers and a final. And I think that's actually it for the UK. I mean, there may be some smaller events which are happening. I know Europe is picking up a hell of a lot with competitions over the last 6 months to a year. But the UK, yeah, I mean, unless there's something I have missed, the only competition which is happening is Bawley, which essentially took over Roadhouse. Because Roadhouse, obviously, as we know, closed and that competition is no more. The WFA approached Bawley Ballison and they now run their competitions. Yeah, 4 qualifiers, I think, and 1 final.
Nice.
European-wise, Rob, there is one coming up in Poland, which they have like $15,000 prize money or euros. They had one in Portugal a couple of months ago with $10K prize money. So they're definitely coming back,
Sure.
That's great to hear that big money's coming back. As Mateo says, hello, everybody. He's watching on Facebook. Big money coming back. 15,000 euros is it's big money for today, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking about starting to compete again.
Right. Yeah. So there's some energy going on over in Europe and the UK. And then Rob's events over here in the U.S. We're doing 2 or 3 a year here with Rob and Mike Hastings as well. So it's coming back around, and some of the corporations are starting to come back around in conversation as well. So we'll see if Fridays and Hard Rock and any other corporation like that will step up in the near future. So, guys, what do you got going on that's such a big deal that we would have you here on National Flair Bartenders Day today?
Go on, Marco.
Well, Tom and I are writing a book
Right.
on flair bartending, as you guys know. I think Tom and I spoke about this about 5 years ago. We were at a show and we kind of had a chat, and then it kind of didn't go anywhere. It was an idea out there, and then I think Tom and I connected early last year, and we became serious about writing a flair book for a number of reasons that we can explain you about a little bit later. But long story short, we've been engaged in this side project because obviously it's a side project. Both Tom and I have a job, and so we're doing this as a side on in our free time. But we've been working on that since May last year on
Okay.
researching and getting it right, and it's been quite a process because like any project, you start and then you kind of planning ahead and try to be as organized as possible as you unfolding the project, as you're developing this thing. You get to know so many things that it became a little bit of a monster now, and we are hoping to finalize it by sometime early next year.
That's great. Now, who are you interviewing, and where are you getting the history of flair?
I think obviously writing a book, we're lucky that we can put a lot of information in there. So we're speaking to everyone. I mean, we've spoken to you, Dean, obviously.
Right.
We spoke to John Bandy, John Mezcal, Ken Hall, Tobin Ellis,
Wow.
Nicholas St. John, Paulo Ramos. Help me out, Marco. Can't think of other names at the moment.
David
Tug,
Wondrich,
Andy. Sorry?
Collins, David Wondrich, Philip Duff, a lot of all the old mix as well that they were involved in the 80s, the Japanese Flair Association. I mean, people from Australia and South Africa and Latin America.
Singapore.
We've been doing it's a global research, Dean, as you can imagine. I mean, obviously the discipline is truly international and touched hundreds of countries around the world, over 100 of countries, and it's a little bit of a huge research, but I think probably halfway into it by now.
I hope so. Because every time we speak to somebody new, then they say, oh, you should speak to this person. And everyone has a story, which is great. I think what we've been trying to focus in on more is the story of flair rather than my story or Marco's story or an individual person. We want to see that sort of timeline of flair and see it branch off into its different avenues of brands, competitions, shows, parties, events, trainings, schools, everything in between, to show whoever gets this book, this is your Bible of flair bartending. This would tell you who made up the moves, who started flair, how it got big, how it traveled around the world, who was involved with X, Y, and Z, so that those people who did create Flairco bars and practice bottles are written in history. Those people that drove the competitions and built up competitions via the FBA. People don't even know what the FBA is in Europe. Half the new Flair bartenders, and they need to know about this history. We're now at a stage with Flair where we have a history, like a quite a formidable history. even though it's not very fair. And you know, not to put a downer on it, there's a couple of people that we wanted to speak to who have sadly passed away, and we never got to speak to them.
Oh, wow.
So it just shows that, you know, we're getting to a stage now where this has to be done, whether we like it or not. Somebody has to do it. So we thought, well, you know, let's just make sure that all the hard work that we put in over the last 20 years gets put down in history, and not just us, but everybody else.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little bit of a training manual as well. You know, as Tom said, it's for people that want to enter a bartending career or flair bartending career in general.
Right.
And by reading the book, you'll be able to understand what it's all about, what flair can takes you, and oh, I think you know, every time I read a chapter, it's kind of so exciting because you read the story and you know, getting all these interviews together, and then you define what you want to put in each chapter, and obviously we've been doing this all our life, and when you read a chapter, you know, it just the way it's flowing, and it's just amazing, those stories that Tom and I didn't even know, you know, and as you are talking to somebody that was involved in the late 70s or early 80s, then they're telling you things that are quite amazing as far as the way they were operating at the time, and the way they were organizing events at the time, and I think it's going to be really cool for a lot of people, and the response from everybody we spoke to has been incredible. You know, everybody, you know, is just very supportive, and thinks that a book like that is necessary, you know. So it's very exciting to see this project coming together slowly.
Just to also add on what Marco's saying is, like, we're not writing this. We've hired a professional writer to write the book and for it to flow correctly. And at the beginning, we were both a little bit unexpected, or we didn't really know what to expect. But yeah, after seeing how he writes and puts the story together and links things
Right.
together, it's amazing. And anybody who has been involved with flair, even or just bartending, even a little bit, will be amazed by the stories that come through from the people that we've spoken to, and how the writer has put it all together. So we're really excited, and we hope that people will enjoy and want to read it. And yes, we are going to be talking about the Flair MC's stretch.
I saw that. I had to put that in there. Being a Flair MC myself, we get so little notice. Isn't that right, Stretch? Tom, you were talking about documenting all the different Flair moves and who invented them. Can you give us a hint on just some of those ones that stand out? You know, any moves that we're all using, like the finest call stall or anything else, and how they were invented, and kind of where they came from?
Funnily enough, we haven't got to that chapter yet, but
all right.
But what we obviously realize that every Flair bartender says that they have a signature move or moves or whatever it may be, and we can't document all of them. So we're going to try and showcase the main ones. Like, for example, the Nicholas bar spoon. You know, everyone still uses it today. People have no idea that it's come from Nicholas. So giving him his limelight for that reason. The finest call stall, knowing that, you know, again, Dean, that was your creation, and how it should be.
Don't make this about me. Don't make this about me.
You know, talking about how John Bandy says that the tin behind the head trick was his trick, apparently, and you know, thumb rolls and finger rolls, where they derive from. You know, the story I heard is that Wayne Collins in the UK did something with thumb and finger rolls, but I can't corroborate that. And sadly, Wayne passed away, you know, 4 months ago. But we're hoping to speak to a close friend of his to see if he can help. But yeah, there's gonna be a lot of allegedly, this move has come from this person, or it's
to the best of your research, right?
Yeah. There's obviously a few moves that we know, like Nicholas's move, we know comes from Nicholas. but like a helicopter on a tin. We can't really say who it came from.
Cash
Um,
born. The way
Yeah, Rob.
the
I
way
knew.
we dealt with it I know exactly where you're going into this. The way we dealt with it at flairbar.com is there's so much controversy, or this was my move, this is my move. I was practicing in my backyard for 3 months. Well, how does anyone know that? So how we defined it was first one to hit it on stage, you're getting the credit for it. And that's easier to prove because we have all that video archive of everything, opposed to like, well, that's my move, your move. So that's how we kind of tackled it. But if you can find a better way, go for it.
yeah, true. No, very true. So I mean, that's the whole thing, is that even with that kind of rule, somebody's going to come up and kick up a fuss. So yeah, we're going to try and
Well,
cover
yeah.
some moves, and others are just going to be sort of said, hey, there's this move, and X, Y, and Z, 1, 2, 3 are famous for this move. You know.
Yeah, and I think being very visual, flair bartending, we'll have a lot of pictures in the book as well, so that people can relate to that and just see a lot of images throughout. So that's the goal.
Is there anywhere online that we can follow some of this journey? Are you guys giving out any bits and pieces or tidbits to keep us thirsty watchers thirsty?
There will be, I
Quenched.
think, as we move forward, there will be a social media page where we will build the launch of the book. Yes.
Right.
We're launching that fairly soon, and well, should I tell them about the video as well, Marco?
Yeah, there'll be a video go up.
So we're gonna do it because obviously we're looking for content, and we can't speak to absolutely everybody. So anybody watching this, we will be putting out a call for pictures, documents, competition results, spreadsheets, anything that you've got which relates to flair bartending and could be good for a book about flair bartending. And this isn't you 3 o'clock in the morning with your mates at Carnival Court going, woo! This is, documents or images that relate to something useful and worthwhile within the flair bartending world over the years. I mean, the more you can send, the better, because it may make it into the book, and that means your name's going to go down in history in the book, and you'll have your moment and get your credit in this book, which will be available for forever. And anything we don't use, we will be trying to share a lot of it on our social media pages when they go live. And everything will essentially be under Flair Bartending Book. So flairbartendingbook.com, it will come under there. And then on social media, it'll be Flair Bartending Book.
Is it hashtag Flair Bartending Book?
It is now.
Make it so. Nice. So we talked about the past of flair bartending. We talked about a little bit the future and the competition scene right now, and the exciting upcoming book you guys have. Tell us what your thoughts are on this resurgence of flair and your thoughts of it in social media right now, and all the different posts and people being involved with it. You're a fan of it, not a fan of it, and why?
Let Marco go first.
I mean, Rob, you probably, I mean, on social media, you have hundreds of posts coming out every single day globally, right? Whether it's Facebook or Instagram, there is so much flair happening daily, and which is huge for the discipline, and some of these guys are getting, hundreds of thousands of views, which is fantastic. Those videos, some of these guys, like Tom, they have hundreds of thousands of followers, which is great, So we didn't have that when we first started, and things do evolve. Now we also make money out of YouTube, out of Facebook, content, and I think it's a great thing. Flair remain a very attractive flair bartending or working flair, whether it's craft or magic. When you do content online, people are very attracted to that, and I think it's huge, because We didn't have that back in the days, and these guys now are taking advantage of that, and it's huge for flair in general.
What do you guys think of the other forms of bartending with flair and the division of it from bottle flipping being flair to magic and bar tricks and all that other kind of stuff?
What do you mean? Sorry.
We're talking about expanding the definition of flair bartending to be more like bartending with flair. So bartenders that have style and pizzazz. Maybe they're flipping bottles and shaker tins, or maybe they're doing some magic tricks and bar tricks. What do you think of the philosophy of the words flair bartender separating into kind of different divisions of entertainment? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it already is. Although people are shying away from the word flair and using things
Right.
like bar skills, craft bar skills, bar whatever, it's all flair, because the definition of flair is to do something with an inept aptitude to do something well, to have style or originality. So the direct definition of flair bartender is to do bartending well, essentially. Um, it's just a shame that the word flair is still associated with what, let's say, the classic style of flair that we know all so well: competitions, three bottles in the air, making simple drinks, putting on a show, performances, big extreme moves. But we all know that flair bartending comes in a multitude of different sizes, shapes, colors, and disciplines. And somebody doesn't have to call themselves a flair bartender, but we know that they are flaring whilst bartending. So I think, I mean, I've thought about this a lot, and it's something I talk about in my presentation about flair bartender, that everyone's a flair bartender, they just don't know it. Anybody who considers themselves a good flair bartender or can do bartending well, you're a flair bartender. It's just you're not a flair bartender in the classic sense, how it is associated, essentially.
Right.
So I think what I've come to grips with or accepted over the last sort of year, I suppose, is to just own flair bartending however it may be, and understand that no matter how it's labeled or how we define it, some people just don't like it, and that's fine. You know, those people are clearly boring, but that's not a problem. So some people just don't like it and don't want that kind of entertainment, you know, and that's completely not a problem. But flair bartending or bartending with flair is stronger than ever. And we see it online, we see it through social media. That's been one of the benefits of social media, that's for sure. And I think it can come, like I said, it can come in all different shapes and sizes. As long as you are making a cocktail and using a technique with style and originality, whether that's with magic, whether that's with how you deal with the money, whether that's how you talk to your guests, or if you're Rene Garcia, who's just retired from bartending, how you entertain with zero flair, but just using the things behind your bar, it's all flair. It's all flair.
Yeah, Rene was awesome, and I was sad to see him retire, but happy to see that the success that he's had over his career bartending at Carnival Court. But Tom, I'm going to direct this question to you, and then Marco and Dean, feel free to jump in afterwards. But what you talked about, and with the whole social media and how what Marco said earlier, we didn't have those tools and technology back then to really showcase it. If we did, maybe to be as big as it is online now as it was then, or vice versa. But more importantly, with technology, what are your thoughts? And Tom, you got some experience with this, of competitions eventually just moving all online, like an online competition. You're from your own bar, your own kitchen, if you will, your practice bar, just competing online globally with others from the comfort of your home, as well as judges being in the comfort of their own house judging as well. And you can talk about bottle and tin and some other stuff you had experience with.
Sure. Yeah, I organized a Battle of the Bottle last year, and I've now passed it on to Eugene Sokolov to take over. And I think there's definitely a space for online flair competitions. 100%, I think there is. I think even a lot of flair competitions nowadays where you have 30 or so bartenders, 20 to 25, unfortunately, perhaps are not ready for the stage, let's say politely. And there's probably another 50 who would love to compete but don't have the funds to fly to that location or travel there to be able to compete. So putting on an initial qualifying round online and allowing everyone to have their moment, and then the top 10 or 6 or whatever gets invited to a real in-person performance. That's how I see competitions going, and I can't believe that they haven't started like that yet. Um, because I think with flair is such a niche thing, and it's going to be niche for a long time, that um, we need to, when it comes to a live performance, we need to make sure that the people there performing are at the highest possible level. That's going to make it more visually happy. People basically who don't understand flair are going to be entertained a lot more. Whereas if we've got 30 or 40 so people going back to back for 5 or 6 hours, I think even as flair bartenders, it can be quite draining, especially as a judge. So I think online is definitely the way forward, but it's not the only way, and it shouldn't take over real in-person competitions. It should be a bonus to them.
Agreed, agreed. And the first one that comes to mind for me is the original online flair comp that I ever saw was called the OFC, the Online Flair Bartending Competition from barproducts.com, where you would submit a video and then we would judge. I was one of the judges, that's why I remember that, for flairbar.com. You would judge, on your own time and send it in. I'm like, what that started was so ahead of its time, but where it's going now and the tools, I'm excited. Dean, I know you got a follow-up question.
Yeah, Tom, I was wondering if we can't go to a competition and we want to start a competition, what advice can you give to a young bartender or even a seasoned bartender in their own home or their own hometown, how to start their own bartending competition and get things going so at least there's some energy growing in the town?
So it's a good question. And I think one thing we lack as a community is those kind of resources for people to find those answers. I mean, you have now the FBA, who's prominent in America, and the WFA, who's prominent in Europe and other parts of the world. Contacting either of those associations and getting some sort of advice or competition organizational pack for some in some way, shape, or form, I think
Right.
is the way forward. I think too many people in flair do not ask others on how it could be, or they don't ask advice elsewhere. They just try and just go and do things themselves. It turns out to be a complete mess, and they don't do it again because they haven't had the professional advice to be able to organize something correctly and just with a minimal level of professionalism. It can still be fun, entertaining, people can still go crazy, but get the advice from some other people, see how it's been done
Right.
before, and then go ahead and try and do your own thing if you really want to.
Basic rules or basic understanding of what the bartenders are to expect.
I think,
Yeah,
Dean,
yeah. Sorry.
to add on what Tom said, start small, in your local area. Perhaps it's just open for your restaurant and club stuff, like back in the days, when some of the big competitions started. Start with your 5 or 6 bartender in house only, and build the community around town, and like we all did back in the days, and kind of grow slowly over the year, and then you do it for a couple of years, and next thing you have a pretty big event, in 3 years time with some good money on.
Right.
Yeah, I think
You gotta
for
stay
me, back.
consistent
Go ahead, Marco.
running. I said you gotta stay consistent and run the event perhaps every other month, and kind of build the network.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be bottle flipping or level of difficulty. It can just be fun, like get every bartender in town to get behind the bar and just have some fun making drinks, right? It doesn't have to be anything more than what you want it to be.
when I first started organizing comps, Scott Young actually put out a handbook back in the day on his website of how to run and organize a comp. It's a little outdated now, but it definitely helped direct me for at least a little bit more of what I was walking into.
Right.
And then to attract sponsors, I had an hour-long conversation with on AOL Messenger with Brian Lewis back in the day of how to attract sponsors and show them their return on investment. And those two things helped open my eyes of a little bit of how to run a comp and how to make sure that you give back to the sponsors. Any advice I can say for anyone running a future comp is don't forget about the sponsors. They're the ones that make us able to put on these competitions. They give you the money, they give you the exposure, and without them, we'd be flipping bottles in our backyard. So when you're running a comp, figure out a way to help promote them. And we've all done certain things where sponsor promotion, the rules and things like that. But the more creative you are and something, you come up with some new ideas while giving back, I think will help continue your success of running more competitions while you're learning.
That's where the digital world comes into play very strongly. If you run a competition and you can do the first round, which essentially could have thousands of Flair bartenders in it, and Smirnoff or someone has sponsored it, and they're going to get the exposure from those 1,000 Flair bartenders. That's content that they can use. That's content that's being shared organically, and that's the best form of marketing, really, when it's word of mouth from one person to another.
Right. Hey, Marco, when we're approaching a sponsor, let's say I've got my competition rules and whatnot set up, you represent one of the largest, longest running sponsors of Flair bartending in the world, finest Colin Real, as we both do, of course. But you're more on the side where you might be cutting the check or saying yes to the event. What kind of things are sponsors looking for from people running events that would entice you to want to advertise at one of our events?
I think it's a great question, Dean. If you're looking into putting up a competition, and let's say you own a bar and restaurant, I would recommend first of all to approach companies that you are working with, liquor companies or mixer company that you are using on a regular basis behind the bar. You're already giving them business, and perhaps they will be open to consider a sponsorship. I think it's always good to put a proposal together. Sometimes you get those random emails from different, bartenders around the world. Would you like to sponsor the event? It's $5,000, and there's no proposal, there's no information about the event, and it's difficult to give money just like that without a plan, and really, I really suggest just to start small, and normally, at least the way we do it, we want to make sure that it's professionally ran. We want to make sure that the bar that is organizing the competition is pouring the product, and we wanna have a nice clean event, more than anything. And I think as an organizer, you got to remember that it's a 50-50 partnership. It's got to be a win-win for both sides, for the sponsor and the organizer. And I think the organizer, they need to coach their competitors that are entering the event to support those brands that are actually putting in the money, which at least back in the days when I was involved, very few people were doing so. But look up to the sponsor. A small sponsor today can be a huge sponsor tomorrow. So you got to build those brands that are paying attention to your event. Whether it's a mixologist or a flair competition, it doesn't matter. But it's difficult to get a sponsor. In some cases, just because the way those proposals come across are not very well defined, and they just don't put in enough details. But again, all in all, it needs to be a 50-50 partnership, and I would start by approaching companies that you work with as a bar and restaurant.
Right, the companies that already support your restaurant, whatever spirit you have in the well, or the mixers that you happen to be pouring. Maybe you can start there and say, hey, you're supporting our restaurant. Do you mind throwing in $500 or $1,000 or whatever it is for this special promotion we've got coming up, like you would with any promotion behind the bar, right?
Exactly.
Tom, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. Do you have a
Well,
do you have
try
a
me.
do you have a bottle or two around over there that you might be able to teach us a flair move?
Some fun flare pours or something?
Here on International Flair Bartenders Day.
Well,
Tom's going to check out his bar. What a cool bar. Is that like a live aquarium you have under your bar, you millionaire?
yeah, the fish are dead at the moment. But that's a porta bar, the greatest mobile bar, apart from the Flair Co, obviously, in the world. Very different types of bars, though. That one's like a very big cocktail station, whereas the Flair Co is obviously very much for one person. Anyway, I was just teaching this. I was just making a video about how to do my Grand Marnier move.
Nice.
And that will be coming out on the YouTube channel in the next couple of days. But why not? I can show you how to do it right here, right now, in a bit more detail. So the move, if I can do it sitting down, looks like that.
That's
okay. And the trick is that when you've got it on your elbow, normally you catch a bottle on your elbow right here. But what you want to do is you want to move the Grand Marnier up to this point, just sort of where, there's a little bit sort of by your bone there. You want it just right there, just so it's sort of on the crease of the on here. Do you know what I mean? So that when it falls forward, hang on, how do I do it? 1 second. I can't remember how to do it now. Yes. When it falls forward, it falls onto the shoulder of the bottle. Then it keeps rolling. You bring your hand back, and then it will land on your hand. And then it's just a case of balancing it. So fall, and it will just roll on there nicely, just like that. There you go. You do need a Grand Marnier to be able to do it. You can try it with a Cointreau if you want to.
What about a Chambord bottle? Could I do that with a Chambord bottle, you think?
You can probably just roll it up and down like a football with a Chambord bottle, yeah.
True story. Here's Steve Harmon saying that there's a great opportunity for Grand Marnier to sponsor us right there. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. Send us $20, Grand Marnier, for the amount we drink it, for sure. Steve Dingley's saying hi. He's all over the place with us today. All right. He's an old Flair guy. Back in the days. Oh, my gosh. This is great. So, guys, when is this book coming out?
Week next Friday. No.
Week next
We're aiming for sort of first quarter 2024.
Okay.
Originally, it was a little bit earlier, but obviously, as with projects like this, I think our writer didn't expect us to have so much content for him and for it to be as detailed and diverse as what it's turning out to be.
And it's only getting started, right?
Sorry?
And you're only getting started on it if he's already overwhelmed.
Yeah. Not necessarily overwhelmed, but just I think both Marco and I said, we just want to do this right. It doesn't matter how long it takes. If it's a year, 2 years, or whatever. Let's just make sure that it's done correctly and has everything in there that should be in there. So hopefully first quarter of 2024.
Great. Yeah. Well, I love how you guys are letting the story tell itself, as opposed to going in with your own, with your own plan or you're wanting to tell your own story, but allowing that story to come out. And you said, this has just been in the back of my brain since you said it, 1970s, you've interviewed bartenders from the 70s that were doing Flair?
Well, people like Magic Mike, he started in the late 70s at Friday.
Right.
79, 78. Magic
right.
Mike, he was at Friday.
Right.
Armando Ortiz from Germany was bartending 78, 79, I think it was, maybe a little bit earlier.
And were they flipping bottles back then?
He says that they were throwing ice in the Philippines.
Right.
But we don't have any proof. There's nothing to corroborate other than somebody, other than his word. But Armando he said after that, he didn't get into Flair at all until he got to Germany, and it was like very late 90s, 2000s.
Right.
Which is obviously a lot of people started to get into flair.
Paulo Ramos was 83, and he was doing a little bit of basic flair. But we also got stuff from the late 1800s, you know, talking about guest bartending, flipping bottles.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I've got a document, one of the books, I'd have to pull it out to find out the exact thing, but where it specifically talks about the bartenders throwing their shaker tins back and forth with their froths and whatnot, and that dates back to the 1830s. You know, it's an organic thing behind the bar. When you're moving fast and you got a bartender there that needs your Grand Marnier, sometimes it's best to just throw it at them, you know?
I hope they catch it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, there's all this documentation which we can find and pull up, and juggling has been around for hundreds of years.
Right.
I don't know how long juggling has been, but forever. I mean, I guess cavemen probably juggled eventually. Like you said, it's an organic thing. I think you said a key thing earlier, like the contemporary modern flair bartender, flair as we know it, I suppose started in the early 80s as you guys know. And I think flair as we classically know it came from 80s TGI Fridays. It came from a juggler, essentially, pretty much.
Right. Well, we are going to be interviewing that entire team of bartenders coming up right here on National Flair Bartenders Day at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The Marina Del Rey team from TGI Fridays is going to be in the green room and coming up, and we'll be talking to those guys and how flair bartending started, or contemporary flair bartending started, or at least competitive flair bartending anyway, for sure.
Right.
So, Rob, you got a follow? You got a question? Sorry, Tom.
No, I'm just saying, looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a lot of good stuff coming up. I'm excited. Just to remind anyone that's watching in the comments, it's great seeing this. Raul, bartender, Steve Dingley, all those comments. Guys, if you can, for National Flair Bartenders Day, what we're asking, those comments on the bottom, those hashtags, post any flair video on your social media right now with the hashtag National Flair Bartenders Day and hashtag Friends of CNL, and let's just continue to celebrate today and continue growing flair in the right direction worldwide.
And if you're in the comments and you have a question to ask, put a Q in front of your question so that we can spot it and get your question asked of the other moderators or the people here on the show today. So if you have any questions, drop them into the comments before we let these guys go. Guys, thank you very much on behalf of all of the flair bartenders of the world for the research you're doing and the documentation you're doing of getting this right for history. And being able to tell the story so that our kids and grandkids can get involved, but more so that we can just prove the history of it and have it locked into the books. So thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for having us on the show, and looking forward to see the documentary too.
Yes, I'm glad you brought it up because we forgot to.
It wasn't about us. That's why I wasn't bringing it up.
Right. So yeah, if coming up in 2024 as well, we hope to have it out mid-2024. Rob and I and Deborah Richards and Patrick Wirtz are working on a documentary about flair bartending. It certainly won't be as robust as the Flair Bartending book or the Flair Bartending Bible, but it's going to talk about some of the rise, fall, and resurgence of flair over the last couple of decades. Rob, did you want to tell us more about it, or?
Yeah, like what Tom said, there's so many people that have contributed to the story and success of flair bartending to where it started to where we are today. There's just no way to be able to showcase everyone properly. But I feel like we did as best we could for the constraints that we have within telling this amazing story in an hour-and-a-half segment. And then it only opens it up. We're all seeing this now as we're in post-production and editing. Like, there's got to be a part 2 and then a part 3. So I'm already throwing it out there. I'm pushing for that to continue to tell more of the bigger story. We're going to start here and just keep growing each documentary a little more and involving more and more stories, hopefully.
Right. Well, there's so many fabulous stories to tell. And maybe our part 2 and part 3 of the documentary will be individual chapters out of the Flair Bartenders Bible.
Nice.
Very good. All right, thank you very much, guys. Anything to say on your way out?
No, well, we appreciate your time. I think you guys always put up a great show. I've been watching a number of episodes over the last few months and last year, and
Right.
very professional. Just keep doing it. Thank you for having us. We look forward maybe to have a second chat, perhaps in the future.
Yeah.
As we're getting ready to launch it, perhaps early next year. Maybe.
Very good. Very good. Well, congratulations and good luck along the way, Tom.
Yeah, the same. Thanks very much for keep pushing the gospel of flair bartending. It's definitely something which is close to all our hearts in one way, shape, or form. And I know that there's a bunch of people watching now who have been affected by flair. Sounds like it was a bad thing. Have been affected by flair in some way for the better, I believe. And
yeah, absolutely.
Anybody who's new into flair, or who's watching this, who's thinking about getting into it, just enjoy it, man. That's the main thing. Just have fun, and that's it. If you can have fun while you're doing it, then you've won already.
Absolutely. That's great. That's great. Guys, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to another couple of decades of this. Raul Bartender says, see you soon. I'll give him the last word. All right, guys. Stay tuned, and I hope you guys watch the rest of the day here on National Flair Bartenders Day on Cocktail Network Live. Thank you, Marco Canova and Tom Dyer, two legends.